Okay, hello. This is video 2, so this is a follow-on from the previous one. I can't fit them all on the same because it's only got 15 minutes limit on this, so that's why I have to do it like this. So this is where we left off. I asked you to suggest ways in which the energy is lost between trophic levels. If we have a look at this one, you can see that the amount of energy that falls on our producers is huge. So we've got 1,000,000 joules of sunlight energy falling on our producers in this example. And only 10,000 of that is actually fixed by the producers. And when I say fixed, what I mean is where we have photosynthesis occurring, they trap the sunlight, and that sunlight is therefore used along with carbon dioxide to make glucose. Okay? And then as we go from, and in fact, that's the biggest inefficiency from sunlight to our primary producers. It's massively inefficient. Then as we go along the food chain, it becomes more efficient, but we are still losing energy to the environment. Now remember, we're not losing energy, we're losing it to the environment. Okay, so you've got to be clear about that one. So energy is being converted from one form to another. We have to talk about those sorts of things. So I asked you, suggest ways in which energy is lost between the sun and the producer. So we'll look at that one first, and then producer to primary consumer, and then just between consumers, full stop. So let's have a look. So in terms of sun to the producer, the plants convert between 1 and 3% of the sun's energy available into organic matter, so into glucose, which then goes on to make other organic matter. So these are the main ways that energy is lost. 90% of it is reflected back into the space by clouds or dust or absorbed by the atmosphere. Not all the wavelengths of light can be absorbed or used in photosynthesis. Okay? So we've got lots of different wavelengths of light. The reason why plants are green is because they reflect the wavelength of light that is equivalent to green. That's why they look green. Okay, so therefore if they're reflecting that light, they're not absorbing it. That's light energy that's not going into photosynthesis. So they absorb pretty much, quite a lot of other colours, but they just don't absorb that one. Light might not form on a chlorophyll molecule. So plants aren't just leaves, there's stems, and there are some plants that are adapted to have chloroplasts with chlorophyll in it in their stem, like cacti are adapted like that. But quite a lot of plants have just got them in the leaves, so if the light doesn't fall there, then it's not going to do photosynthesis. There might be some other limiting factor, so if there's low carbon dioxide levels, it's going to limit the rate of photosynthesis as well. But 1 to 3 are the main ones that I see. So that answers your first one. Next one is producer to primary consumer or consumer to consumer. So you can see energy is lost during transfer because some parts of the organisms are not eaten. Some parts are eaten but can't be digested, so they leave in the feces. Yum. Some of the energy is lost in excretory materials, i.e. urine. And then probably the biggest one, some energy is lost as heat from respiration, directly from the body to the environment, especially warm-blooded animals like us. Okay, so these are the main ways we have this inefficiency of transfer. So for this reason, that's why if I come back to an original picture, that's why food chains or food webs very, very rarely go beyond 5 trophic levels. So as you can see, this one's got 5. It's got primary producer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to quaternary. Oops. Very few have that many. And the reason is because the energy loss at each trophic level, and you normally have to give a reason, energy loss to the environment, means there is insufficient energy to support the next trophic level. So we come back, we'll come back to this diagram here. This is a pyramid of energy. So it shows you, by the time we got to that tertiary consumer up at the top, the snake, it's hardly getting any energy. There is definitely not enough energy there to support a quaternary, another trophic level. So that's why food chains are limited generally in that region. Okay. So yeah, you can see the least efficient transfer is sun to primary producer. Then from primary producer to, so if that's from plants to herbivores, is about 5 to 10%. So it's much more efficient than the previous. If you notice, it's not quite as efficient as the transfer between a herbivore and a carnivore. And I guess that's because plants have quite a lot of indigestible material. There's a lot of cellulose, and that's not digestible by quite a lot of herbivores. So I guess that's a reason why. By the time we're going between consumers, so herbivore to carnivore, the eating of animals, there is a lot more, there's less indigestible material, although things like bones and eyeballs are, well, maybe eyeballs are digestible, I don't know, I've never tried it, but bones are generally indigestible, and teeth. But it's definitely better than the other. So how do we calculate the efficiency of energy transfer? This is one you're going to have to do. We measure the energy available in kilojoules, that's the energy, per metre square in a certain area per year. So it's done like that because if we're going to compare them, we have to have a unit, the same unit if we're going to compare all of these things. So how we do the calculation is the energy available after divided by what was available before times 100. So there's a good example in your notes you can see. So if I wanted to calculate the efficiency of transfer from producer to primary consumer, remember it's what is available after divided by what was available before times 100. So primary consumer was 14,146 divided by what it came from the producer, which was 87,402 times 100. So there's our efficiency, which is 16.19%. Okay? So you have got this little questions to do, which I've put again in the same document as the ones from the previous. So have a go. I will be putting the mark scheme of that up a little bit later. You've also got this one to have a go at, where you can calculate the percentage efficiency. All right, so this one gives you a little hint at the bottom as well about the fact that if you're trying to find it hard to do something, you've got to remember that energy is not lost, it's just converted from one form to the other, so everything needs to add up. And again, I will put the mark scheme of that up in a bit. Okay, so if I just go back to the specification. So what we've looked at is what an ecosystem is. We've looked at the biotic part of the ecosystem, which are all of these: producers, consumers, saprobionts, herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, all links to some of the consumers, and trophic level isn't obviously not a biotic thing. And then we've looked at the abiotic components. I've just mentioned them. Let's go back to the spec. So they're the non-living things. We looked at biomass, biological mass, which is the actual biological tissue within an organism. So usually we talk about it to do with plants, and it's the idea, obviously plants do photosynthesis, they're going to take that glucose and they use it to build biological tissue. Okay, your biomass is things like your muscles and your bones and all of that biological mass. Okay, so we can measure, remember I told you we can measure biomass by putting something in an oven, and then keeping on doing this and weighing until we get a constant mass. We can also estimate the energy within systems by doing calorimetry, and I talked you through that. It's the amount of energy stored within that biomass that it's to evaporate a certain quantity of water. No, it's not evaporate. Let me start again. It's the amount of energy in the biomass which will raise the temperature of water by 1 degree. We don't ever have to do that calculation. I don't think I've ever seen us doing it. But that information is fed into this thing which is called a pyramid of energy. And as you can see, the amount of energy drops, available energy drops during each trophic level, which is why it can't go more than 5 trophic levels generally. All right, and then calculate that. So that's a little recap of all of them. So we've got 2 videos for today. Phew. Have a go at the questions. I'll put the mark schemes up later and do the glossary. And then the next video will appear for the next lesson. Okay, bye.